Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another Walking Dead video. Yeah, I took a bit of a break. It was a very actually pretty long break. It was almost 2 weeks long, but I figured because we were in a very weird spot where there wasn't a lot of information coming out, I might as well just wait. There's about to be a lot of stuff that does come out right away. There's actually been some news info that is very exciting that's come out over the last couple of days, so I will get into that here. I have heard some stuff of a trailer coming out very soon, and yeah, Daryl Dixon's premiere is obviously happening this weekend here coming up, and that's obviously going to be exciting. Hopefully we get a release date and like all that information. There's going to be a lot of stuff that drops, and I really think that they were just sort of waiting for June. I think April and May, honestly, they just kind of wanted to just wait a little bit, just sort of let The Walking Dead just kind of have a timeout for a bit before you start to promote a lot of stuff, because you do want to kind of have a little bit of a, like no news and stuff. This way, when you build up stuff again, people get excited again, right? Because people kind of need a little bit of a break. But yeah, we actually have a pretty amazing interview that came out the other day regarding Andrew Lincoln and the possibility of doing a Ones Who Live or The Ones Who Live season 2. And it seems very, very likely either a season 2 or a new series. I'm not entirely sure what format it's going to be, but as of now, I'm just going to kind of call it The Ones Who Live season 2. Though I will say, just because of the story and where it seems to be going, or at least where Andrew Lincoln would want to take it, I do think that it would probably be a new series. And I'll talk about why. But I just think that the CRM arc, a lot of certain aspects to it are kind of done with, I do think. But I think we know why now. I really think they ended that because they do want to get back to the sort of survival horror that The Walking Dead always was. And it seems like Andrew Lincoln is probably a big reason why, right? I think he really wants it to be very like simplistic, just like The Walking Dead used to be in the first couple of seasons. It seems like that's what he really likes. He doesn't really like these bigger storylines, it seems like. But yeah, we'll talk about exactly what he said here, then we'll get into the whole thing here. So before we go any further, obviously make sure to be a subscriber if you do want to get all my Walking Dead content like this. Now, I saw this here in a tweet from @AaronsArm The Walking Dead, or TWD, and I'm not entirely sure who the interview was done by. It says @Collector Caitlin or Undead Walking is here as well. This has to do with the UK's release, obviously, for The Ones Who Live, because The Ones Who Live just came out for the UK on May 31st, I believe. And it's kind of funny because, I mean, obviously, a lot of people have watched this like months ago, but a lot of people haven't, and a lot of the press that's going around, at least in the UK, and a lot of the talk about the show is it's almost like the show's airing again, but like over there. Like, it's actually kind of cool to see everyone get sort of excited about it, right? But I'll leave a link down below to this video right here. Definitely go and check out this video. This video honestly was very awesome to watch. It was kind of cool to see Andrew Lincoln talking about The Ones Who Live, and this is what I mean when he talks here. This is why the talk of a season 2 or like a new series is very much alive, because Rick and Michonne's story is not done yet, and it doesn't seem like Andrew Lincoln's done with Rick Grimes. I think in terms of where the story was for The Ones Who Live, the whole talk about it being a love story and everything, I think that's why they focused on that so much, to be honest. Like, I think they had to tell that aspect to it to get that stuff sort of done and out of the way to focus on some other things. And I think that's where Andrew Lincoln wants to go next with the story, is sort of get down to the basics and really tell this sort of, survival horror story here. So, and what I will say about this as well is he's talking about this. Gimple also recently talked about this as well. Like, Gimple, a couple of months ago, or I guess whenever The Ones Who Live ended, he actually talked about The Walking Dead going back to like its classic style, not like these bigger stories here with the CRM and all of that. There's this quote right here. I'll leave a link down below. Definitely go and check it out. Gimple here responds to the question with saying, "I'd love to do more classic characters in very different situations, but with those same sort of Walking Dead story values," Gimple said. "That said, I do have insane ideas that have nothing to do with any of that. I like doing both, but I think we'd had an emphasis on the experimental. I would love to do more classic stuff for a little while." And if you look at Dead City, Negan is getting Lucille back. You have Kim Coates' character, Bruegel. It looks like that story is very much becoming, very classic Walking Dead. And obviously Daryl Dixon's going to have the variant walkers and all that. That's going to be where the survival horror is really going to be. But it seems like Andrew Lincoln also wants that. So what's very interesting about that is the question actually was kind of unrelated. Well, not necessarily unrelated, but Andrew Lincoln took it upon himself to sort of go off on a tangent and talk about, or at least doing a season 2 or like a new series. Like, the question was, where would be the ideal place to film? Because obviously you filmed in Georgia, it was very hot there, and then you filmed in Jersey, during February or whatever, like the later months there. And or I guess earlier months, and it was actually at one point starting to snow, right? So very, very different. And so if you were to continue this story or like do a new series, where would be the ideal place to film? And Andrew Lincoln just kind of laughed and was just joking, said like, well, like Hawaii or something like that would be really cool. But then he went off on a tangent afterwards and started to talk about what he would actually want to do in terms of doing another story and all of that. And this is the one thing with Andrew Lincoln that I have learned. And I've really learned that with The Ones Who Live. I think it's been a while, so it's been kind of hard to see, I guess this aspect to everything here. But he is basically the Tom Holland of the Walking Dead universe. He spoils a lot by accident. Obviously, he doesn't mean to. It's just that I think he just doesn't know, like just when to not say certain things, in regards to the show and all of that. I know Denai Guerrero was always saying, no, you can't say that. You can't say that. Well, you said that. Now people know, right? Like we all knew he was going to lose his hand right away just based off of what he was saying. So, Andrew Lincoln saying what I'll get into what he says here. It's very, very interesting because I feel like, based off of what Gimple just said as well, there has been a lot of conversations about this, and it seems like this is probably going to be where this story does go next here. And again, like I said, I will leave a link down below to his response here. It starts about like at 5:25 is when the question is asked, and he sort of talks for about a minute or two. But what he says here, and I did my best to sort of quote everything here, but I might have a few things off. But yeah, basically this is his response to, where would you like to film? And then afterwards he went off on a tangent talking about what he would want in a new story. And basically he says, if there were another opportunity to tell this story, I quite like the idea of paring it right back down to basics again, and also putting these characters in, really sort of cranking up. The story we were trying to tell was a much more epic love story. It's a bigger scale, it's quite grand of scale of sort of storytelling and world building, but essentially at heart it is this love story. But what I would like to do if I were to sort of direct it or something would be to remember the scene where he sort of lights the match going down the stairs when he's in the hospital. So here he's talking about, obviously, in season 1, episode 1, where he wakes up from the hospital and he doesn't know what's going on, doesn't know it's the apocalypse or anything. He's just seeing a lot of, like obviously zombies and stuff everywhere, but he's not really understanding what is happening necessarily yet. It's a lot of scary sounds, and he goes down to obviously he's going down the stairs. It's very just dark in that room. He has that match. The match keeps going out, and it's just like you're very focused on like what is happening. Then eventually he opens the door and it's so bright. And then obviously he enters this new dead world, right? So that's sort of what he's referencing here. He goes on to basically explain how terrifying it is, that match, that's all he has. It keeps going out, this and that. He's hearing all these noises, and Rick doesn't really know what's going on. But Andrew Lincoln continues on saying, I want to bring it back to that, to sort of pare it back down, to bring it back to the very simplistic survival horror that it essentially always was. And then he goes on to say, he wants to put these characters in bad situations again. Compromise was the one word he used. He wants, like these characters have accomplished a lot and have done so much that he wants them to basically feel human again. And I do really like that, because that is the one thing that I think a lot of people do complain about is sort of, I don't want to say plot armor. And obviously these characters would survive the next story or whatever they were going to do. Because, you do want to tell stories, but you just have to make it seem like it is actually very, scary and threatening and all that. Because there's a lot of stories where you just, like, the character's going to survive anyways. Like a lot of TV shows and movies, like, the character's going to survive, right? Because that there's other movies. But they make it very, very interesting and all of that you don't really care about that so much, right? And I think that's where, you have to go as well. I do think when you really look at, like, that was my whole complaint about Rick and Michonne, right? Like The Ones Who Live at the very end, is it seemed like they were very much unstoppable. It just seemed kind of insane to think that these two characters took down the CRM entirely. It was just like again, I knew it was going to happen in some way, but I wanted it to feel more grounded and realistic. And in the way it happened, it was so fast, and a lot of the logic of, how threatening the CRM was just sort of went away. And it was definitely very disappointing, only because they rushed it. I think if they would have gave us an extra episode or two, really got into some of the stuff at the CRM, explored some of Beale's backstory, and, just spent like 3 episodes there at the CRM base, and then you just kind of see what happens. But I think there was just a lot more that they could have done there. But now looking back at The Ones Who Live, it's very interesting, considering what Andrew Lincoln said here. I think that, I really think that they aren't the biggest fans of the bigger storytelling with the CRM and all of that. I think some of that stuff, it does get exciting, and I think that they have done a lot of that. The Commonwealth arc was very exciting. The CRM arc for the last however bit was. But I do think that Gimple wants to get back down to like survival horror. And Andrew Lincoln also said that as well, right? Like I read Gimple's quote earlier, and there's also what Andrew Lincoln was saying here as well. I do think that, it makes a lot of sense, and I do agree with his opinion that the characters, like they've accomplished so much, and he wants them to feel like compromised again and all of that. Because I just, you look at certain characters and it really does feel like they haven't suffered a lot in a while, which I know is, that's the thing though. I was saying that a lot during The Ones Who Live, and I would get a lot of people saying like, wow, like you just really want them to suffer all the time. And it's like, that's kind of the point of The Walking Dead. Like that's kind of the point of the story, is like seeing these characters struggling, but also getting through it and stuff. And if you look at The Ones Who Live, a lot of things happen pretty easily. I would say episodes 1 and 2 were more the episodes where there was actually a struggle and you saw a lot of really amazing stuff there. But I think afterwards, once they found each other, from that point on, everything just sort of went their way, So I think that bringing it back down to the fact that these are just people, like they're not superheroes or anything like that. Like, I think that that would be really amazing here. And what I will say is it's very interesting that Andrew Lincoln's talking about all this here, because if he was actually done, like that's the thing, if The Ones Who Live or the new series, or like if Rick was just done in general, like as a character, Andrew Lincoln wouldn't be talking about it like this, right? Like I look at it like Gimple literally was just saying this like however long ago about, bringing the story back to something very simplistic like this and just doing some classic stories. And now we have Andrew Lincoln saying very similar things. And so I feel like there has been some conversation. We heard a lot of the interviews afterwards. There was a lot of talk about a lot of other things. I think that it does make sense that this is where the story is most likely going to go. And I think that's probably what, we could expect from this. Now, what I will say is I don't think there's going to be a season 2. I really don't see there being a season 2 of The Ones Who Live. Like, potentially, I feel like for like if I'm making videos and stuff, I sort of have to title it that, because I don't really know how else or like what else to title it. Because I mean, do I just call it Rick's new series? Like, you know what I mean? Like The Ones Who Live season 2 just kind of makes the most sense, because that's just, people get what I'm talking about, right? So it just seems like, a season 2 would be the continuation of that epic love story. Like definitely you can go in a different direction, but it would still feel like the continuation of that story. And, just in terms of a viewing experience, people watching, say, The Ones Who Live, if they see that there's 2 seasons of the show, there's going to be an expectation that there's a continuation of, season 1 story, where it might actually be very different, right? Because of what Andrew Lincoln and Gimple are talking about here, about bringing it back down to that simplistic, just survival horror story, right? To what The Walking Dead used to be, like literally in the very first season, because the very first season was like, that was the big focus there, right? Was that survival horror, like just being in the zombie apocalypse again. And so that seems to be where they want to go next. And I personally do agree with it. I would really like that sort of a story. I really like the survival aspect to it. And it's been a while since we've seen Rick in a situation where he's like trying to survive and whatnot, right? And I posted this on Twitter, or I guess X, and a lot of people responded to it. And it seemed like a lot of people, or at least some of the responses to it anyways, were very much like, well, I don't know how they would do this again. Though a lot of people did agree with it. They were like, you know what? Like the whole Rick and Michonne story, that they told that story, and now they could sort of focus on the next part, the survival part, right? And now imagine having Rick and like Judith having scenes with them together, trying to survive and this and that. Like you could really make it really exciting. You don't have to tell the whole reunion part with their family anymore, right? Honestly, just looking at the comments here, I'm looking at like all the comments. A lot of people here are basically under the same idea here, saying that, yeah, they would really like that to be the next part of the story here. They absolutely love all of this. Though I am seeing a few comments of people saying, I don't know how they would do that, because they made everything feel so epic. All the characters have a lot of skills now and all of that. So how would they, go back down to, in the very beginning of the apocalypse, it makes sense because you don't really know how to survive. They've learned so much, so they know how to survive. I think where you can go with that is variant walkers, because Daryl Dixon's, first of all, getting into that. There's a very easy way to sort of fix a lot of this here, where you can make variant walkers, the more dominant walker, like in America and all of that. And then it wipes out a lot of communities, or it does certain things. And yes, you could argue that, oh, it's just doing the same story again. It's like, well, it's not really, because if you think about it, there's a lot more depth to the characters. There's a whole history there. Like, that's the thing about The Walking Dead. Like, The Walking Dead is basically real life. Like, it's always been that. It's basically been what, like, real people almost. Like, these characters have really felt like real people. And, like, this is how an apocalypse would really feel. And the characters honestly feel very grounded. The story has always felt very grounded. And I think that's why the last couple of years it hasn't felt like that, though it's been exciting, but you can't keep doing it forever. And that's the one thing that I've learned from just a lot of other shows is that if you keep hyping it up and like bringing the story to other levels and making it bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, you're always going to have to keep doing that. And eventually at some point it's going to get very ridiculous. So I think you can bring it back down. I think the way that they ended The Ones Who Live, there's a way that you can actually do this where you can have the characters really, much more grounded and back to normal, just living normal everyday life. And then even if you introduce variant walkers and all of that, you can still have a very simplistic survival horror story there. So I'm very excited about this. Based off of what he was saying here, it seems like there will be a season 2 or a new series. Like he's not talking like he's done. He was actually talking about like directing it or something. So I think that if they were to do another, it probably would be a new series or something, but he's definitely probably going to direct an episode or two, because if you think about it, Danai Gurira, like she got to write an episode, right? So I think Andrew Lincoln's going to be like, well, I would like to direct, I would like to do something like that. And I just really like that the sort of direction that they can really take this year, really bringing things back down to that survival horror story and making it feel very, horror like if you just think about season 9, that was always one of the things that I always felt like was just sort of missed, that a lot of us fans never got, and that was with the Whisperer arc. We never got to see Rick in that situation. That arc was so exciting. Like all of season 9 was so good. Like really the best storytelling of the entire series, of the entire franchise, right? To have the Whisperers like show up, people thinking that the Walkers were evolving. They were like, what's going on here, right? Just how dark it felt, all the build up to the Whisperer Pikes at the very end. And then the snow episode, right? So imagine actually having Rick there throughout all of that, all the interactions between Rick and Alpha. There was a lot there that we missed out on. And so going back to something like that, I think would be really incredible. And, in order to do that, you do have to sort of wrap up some of the stuff with the CRM and do certain things there. But there's definitely a way that you can. There definitely is a way that you can do that. And Andrew Lincoln saying this, honestly, I feel like is really teasing what the next story is going to be. And I think we have an idea here as to what that story is going to be, because I don't think they're going to continue the CRM arc. Like at this point, doing a whole Mason Beale storyline and all that. I don't know if they're going to go through, all of that, because it seems like what they really want to focus on is sort of bringing back zombies again, basically, making zombies scary. So, yeah, I'm very interested in that. And that's where the Daryl Dixon show could be very interesting, right? With the variant walkers and stuff. Like that could be our clue as to how they're going to do that. So anyways, post all your thoughts down below. Hope you guys all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.